All right, we are live. Welcome everyone. As you continue to trickle in, I'm Nick Bennett. Thanks for spending the time with us today. Again, you could have spent your time anywhere. You're spending it with us, and we are incredibly grateful. We're going to be talking about a topic that I'm incredibly passionate about. We're going to be talking about how to bring out of home into your ABM strategy. As someone that has built ABM programs from scratch a few times now, I think out of home is incredibly important to that. And we're going to keep this tactical, to the point. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Yes, this is being recorded. You will get the replay link after if you cannot stay for the whole thing, or if there's certain things that you maybe missed and want to get back to. We'll make sure to do that. And before we introduce these amazing people that are with me, I just want to set the stage. So there's a lot of noise in the digital channels that are out there right now. Everything is flooded. And for people that know me, I am a huge advocate of people first go to market. How do you make things more human? And so getting in front of key accounts is harder than ever. Out of home gives you another path. And maybe you didn't think about that other path, but it's not about replacing what's working. It's about standing out where others aren't showing up. So with that said, I have three incredible people who are way smarter than me in all of this, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves so you can get to know them. And I'm sure you probably heard of all of them, but I want to give them the spotlight. So Corinna, I'll throw it over to you first, and then we'll go to Austin, and we'll finish with you, Greg.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nick. Happy to be here with you all. My name is Corinna Owens. I have been in B2B marketing, SaaS in particular, for the last 14 years, building demand generation and account-based marketing programs from the ground up. Right now, I do that fractionally, which means I work with several different clients. Some you may have heard of, like Orem, Novatic, UserGems, and then before going out on my own to help companies, my last in-house was with a company called Gong, who I'm sure you're all familiar with, where I'll be talking about some of the examples about how we use other campaigns to leverage them into things like out of home ads as well. So happy to be here.
Amazing. Austin, how about yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Austin Sandmeyer. I'm the head of growth and customer marketing at Sendoso. I've been with Sendoso for coming up on 3 years. Prior to joining Sendoso, I've been doing and building and scaling marketing teams at different startups for 10 plus years, all kind of doing ABM elements and ABM different tiering and stuff, which is super fun. So ABM programs, I feel like lives in the bloods of like field marketers and demand gen people and how they think about it. So been doing that. And I'm sure many of the people on the line are doing that today. Super excited to talk about out of home, super excited to talk about the digital fatigue that is happening in the world that I think we're all probably feeling at this point, and how you can add and modify and change channels to create better resonance on ABM accounts. I'll probably be saying a few of my out-of-home experiences from Sendoso, probably share a few from other companies as well. And I think I'm super excited. This is going to be fun.
Amazing.
I'll pass it over to Greg.
Awesome. Hard to follow those two intros. Greg Wise, founder and CCO of OneScreen. And we are modernizing out-of-home advertising. A big use case for out-of-home advertising, or OOH, for B2B is ABM. My background my co-founders and I started HubSpot early on there, helped to build out a couple teams there. So that was a heck of a ride. Went into commercial real estate, marketing, commercial real estate. Two things have a baby, they come together. It's out-of-home advertising. And ABM has been a huge component of what we do, the use case for out-of-home, especially obviously for B2B folks. Wasn't necessarily something that we intended to do when we started the company, but it's a natural fit. So I'm excited to dig into that today.
Amazing. Well, we're excited. This is going to be a fantastic conversation for everyone that is listening. This is only a 30-minute conversation, so we're going to go fast. We're going to go furious. We may not get to all of your questions. If we don't get to your questions, someone will follow up. But if you do have your questions, throw them into the chat. Charlie is in the background. He's amazing. He's handling everything, and we'll get to as much as we can live in the conversation. But with that said, I'm going to kick things off. We're going to go to Corinna, and we have an interesting question here. So in your mind, what makes out-of-home work in a B2B setting when most people still think of it as a B2C channel? Because, before I started thinking about out-of-home, I always thought, it's the billboards, it's the stuff that, all these, cool like B2C companies are using, but B2B isn't using that. But that is far from the truth. So Corinna, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, it's the perfect pattern disrupt, right? Because you aren't really expecting to see that. So you're already like winning by doing something that so many people are not leveraging now. I think the mistake some companies can make is they go into it kind of thinking it as a singular campaign rather than how does this fit into everything we're already doing. So like at Gong, for example, we ran Super Bowl ads, and that was very novel and unique for B2B at the time. But those are very expensive, and you don't want it to just kind of like live in the vacuum of you have to be in this region, watch the Super Bowl at this time to catch the ad. But we took a similar approach where we would run those ads and then look at the regions where we did air the commercial and retarget them with things like a billboard where we knew our core buying group would be, where we knew the headquarters would be, to kind of stretch the life of that campaign a little bit. So I think that that's kind of how you should think about incorporating it into what you're already doing. What is this big pillar campaign that you're running? And how can we then maybe tailor that just a bit to be really unique and bespoke for specific audiences and specific regions with something like out of home?
I love that. And I think you bring up a good point of it kind of being integrated into the whole marketing strategy, which brings me to my next question for Austin. Austin, when you think about out of home, in your mind and in your experience, can it be used for both awareness and deal acceleration?
For sure. Yes, I've used it for both actually. And I think that's what is great about out of home and the different channels is like you can use them in different ways and kind of mix and marry them in a fun method to like set up this crazy out of home ABM, channel progression. And like I've used it for awareness to get accounts to pop. So taking target accounts, mapping them, identifying where they're going, what's going on. You could do that for individual companies and headquarters. Depends on who you're selling to. Everybody's got fun ICPs that we can talk about. But and then also for the deal acceleration, you might have one department, or you might have one area, or you might have one person, but you're trying to get the rest of the buying committee and you know where they are because they're probably in certain places. You can kind of move those deals forward. You can either do it based on headquarters. You could do it off like maybe you need the CCO to get involved, and there's a CCO conference and that CCO goes to that conference. Like there's so many different ways to kind of build the buying committee as well as create awareness for your product with out of home. That like that's one of the more fun parts, I think, of building out of home and using different channels into it.
Yep, 100% with you there. And I think a big part of that is data. And Greg, when you think about the types of data that marketers should be using to guide their out-of-home placements, like what is that? Especially for those that are listening that might be like, all right, cool, this sounds awesome. I'm doing ABM. I think out of home is interesting, but what's the data? Like what should I be looking at when I think of like that guide?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, just to piggyback off what Corinna and Austin said, integrated 100%. It's not a this or this approach. It's a this and this, right? So all of these tactics working together, the rising tide, I say this too often, rising tide lifts all boats. Super cliche, but it's super true. And the data is there to prove it. And there's multiple, Austin, what you said is interesting too. Out of home is the ultimate broadcast medium. And a lot of these target accounts for a B2B company, there's multiple stakeholders involved in the buying process, right? And so it's not just influencing the marketer, it's influencing the entire marketing team, the C-suite. In terms of the data, look, starting with your ICP, who is the audience? Who are the people that buy the thing that you sell? It's identifying, and look, we have geolocation data, we have demographic and audience data that we ingest to be able to identify where are the highest concentrations of this audience in a given market, down to the street level, the neighborhood, zip code level, to say, hey, here are your marketing managers, your C-suite executives, the folks who have a certain income level here, drive a certain kind of car, shop in these kinds of places, are involved in business-related buying decisions. That's where we start, is where those concentrations. Two is certainly overlaying those target accounts. And it's one thing to overlay those target accounts, but it's another thing we want to identify, especially in a world that there's hybrid or remote only type of environments. We want to identify where do those employees actually live and what are sort of like, where do they live, work, and play, right? What's that daily journey that they take? So we use mobile location data to identify that. We actually can geofence headquarters, Austin, to your point, and say, hey, employees that go here or have ever gone here, here's where they originated from. Here are the roadways they've taken to actually get to this particular location. And then here's where else they go spend their time and money. We've identified these people that entered this location. They also go shop here. They eat here. They go to the gym here. The day in the life of the ICP, of your persona, is what you want to figure out. then the inventory from there is just naturally comes then. It's what formats, no matter what it is, index the highest to reach those people in those places.
Yep, 100% agree with you. And Corinna, you dropped something interesting in the chat as well. And I think what you brought up is interesting because I think there is a mind shift that needs to happen for teams that have only done digital ABM before. And I'm curious on your thoughts on that, because I think you have so many bright ideas of like how you could do this. But I think so many people, I hate to say like they're using the old playbooks, but a lot of, marketers are still using the old playbook where they're like, oh yeah, ABM, cool. I'm doing digital, running display ads. I'm running, paid ads, whatever it is. Like they only do the digital aspect of that. And do you think there's a mind shift that needs to happen for that, Corinna? And like, if so, how do you think about it differently?
Yeah, I think it's a good call out. I mean, I think that we kind of err on the side of that because that's typically what we're sold is the right way to do ABM, like through platforms that are like dependent on you running display advertising for it to be ABM, right? And then that's how we report off of it and that's how we get attribution from it. But I think that it's really the moments that like Charlie even sent into the chat, surprise and delight. Austin and team know that so well too. Like you have to do something that's a little bit different that maybe you can't trace perfectly in an attribution, but from like a gong call recording of, oh my God, I can't believe you showed up with, treats for our team at our SKO. And I can't believe them when we went to the airport, like we all saw your ad talking to us. That also then probably becomes something digital too, right? I think we're all kind of familiar with, the Times Square billboard ads, right? I think that's a really interesting play that people are taking too, where they're honoring their customers and having them show up on Times Square billboards, right? That's just a moment that I think you can't really replicate perfectly in digital. It's kind of got to start in this kind of unique in-person shared experience. So I would say that, again, pairing it with what you're already doing, because you're not turning the lights off, you're still keeping that air coverage with digital. You can even start to like prove attribution of out of home with digital per some of the points that Greg was bringing up. But it's important to have a mix of things because that's really when that becomes real and tangible for your executive team to see that the juice was worth the squeeze to try something a little outside the norm.
Yep, 100%. I was actually just on a billboard in New York City recently, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I don't know, it's never happened to me before. And I was just like, it's such a creative way. And they had a photographer there that like took a picture of it and like sent it to me. And I was like, oh, that's like really creative, cool. Like something that was interesting. And I mean, they didn't even ask me to buy anything, which was fantastic. So
not yet.
So, Austin, let's talk about, again, like, how do you figure out which accounts are worth spending out of home budget on? Because again, I come from the direct mail and gifting space as well. And so I think, again, when I was at Alice, so I launched their initial ABM program. And something I was thinking about is like, hey, when you've never done this before, how do you figure out what accounts are worth spending the money? And I'm curious, like on your thoughts, whether it's at Sendoso or other companies, how have you thought about that?
Yeah, I typically think about it in terms of as much as you can calculate your customer acquisition cost, you can usually backdate into your ABM program how much money you can kind of walk and spend through that. And like we all know that, customer acquisition cost, no matter what tool you're using, is a little fuzzy math and a little like fun, art and science to get there, but it allows you to get to a place. So once you kind of understand that, I think one misconception that often happens with out of home, it happens with a lot of like non-digital channels, in my opinion, is that people are like, this is going to be very expensive. This is going to be so expensive. And then you take probably 20 seconds and you start looking at how much you're spending on LinkedIn ads and how much you're spending on Google ads and how much you're spending on display ads and the conversion metrics on those. And you're like, but actually, is it? Like, is it actually that more expensive when you actually are getting bang for buck versus like thousands of LinkedIn ads that get like maybe actually 5 impressions on your actual buying committee versus like, okay, we could actually get our buying committee and hit them and know where they are at and like impress them with something that's physical, tangible, whatever. And so those are the things that I usually think about is like one thing about your customer acquisition costs, understand how you think about that. From a perspective of like, we need to put so much into digital, we need to put so much into out of home, we need to put so much into physical or gifting or whatever, how much is it used for the BDR team? And you're thinking about that, but then backwards in like, okay, if we were to pivot And like, honestly, for everybody in the audience, probably you have already had if you're on this webinar, but like have conversations with vendors in the space that actually are doing this day to day, like know what's going on and understand how much stuff costs. Like they can tell you and give you actual information about what's happening. And no, they're not going to, like, believe me, everybody can click unsubscribe in an email at some point. Like, don't worry, you're going to get insight in the intel. I think one of the things that scares people is just like, that sounds crazy expensive. I'm not even going to, like, that billboard has to be so expensive. I don't even want to have the conversation. Have the conversation. You'll get to understand. And you'll also understand, like, there's digital billboards. There's different types of out of home that you can get. There's bus cards. There's like so many different options that is like really fun once you start digging into it, that allow your price point to actually go further than, you know, another 1,000 LinkedIn ads that are being impressed upon this committee. Yeah, that's kind of how I think about it.
No, I love that. Honestly, you broke it down incredibly well.
Yeah.
And there's a question that came in. Actually, I'll go through the first one first, and I'm not sure which one of you want to tackle this one, but I'll throw it out there. How do you ensure that you're influencing decision makers from those accounts with out of home? I don't know, Greg or Austin or Corinna.
Yeah, look, part of it goes back to the data that I had mentioned, which is, yes, it's the physical location of a particular headquarters. Sure, if you have intel that key decision makers are in the office, that is certainly fantastic. But otherwise, it's identifying not just where those people go into the office, but where they quite literally live. And that's the data that, you know, we ingest, right? And we ingest from multiple sources. But being able to aggregate as much of the human population as you possibly can, and identifying those high concentrations of C-suite executives, folks that have buying power, certain household income, certain professions. We ingest profession data. That's going to be your best bet. And again, look, out of home is a broadcast medium. It is not a one-to-one medium. And that is certainly something that we like to convey and be very transparent about. It is, you know, it's more on the top of funnel side of things, and it is a broadcast medium. But with the proper data, you can be as targeted as we've ever have been in this space.
What element, Greg, I want to tap into that as well is, like, when you're thinking about your influencer and decision makers, you may have your, you know, 5 people that are on your actual signing documents that you're going back and forth. But if you're probably targeting larger companies, your buying committee is significantly larger than that. And you probably don't know everybody, and you probably don't get everybody on your LinkedIn ads or whatever. And so when you're thinking about, you know, these types of mediums, you're actually thinking about building really strong brand equity and really strong brand awareness. And like, how can I know that I want OneScreen to be thought about by everybody at this company, and thinking about that and bringing that forward, because you know what, that person is going to talk to their boss, and they're going to go talk and have lunch with that other person, and your name will move around. Like, that is one element that you need to be continually thinking about as well.
I mean, you just nailed it. And just to come off that is it's building that trust and authority. And so out of home is we've made it like that big moment of authority. It is that channel to do that, and it builds trust and credibility. So it's when the influencer does go to committee, you know, the buying committee, whoever it is, that buying committee is likely more familiar with your brand. I've seen those ClickUp ads everywhere. I've seen Monday.com everywhere. I've seen Ramp everywhere. Right? They're familiar with the name, with the brand. That's everything you can ask for, because you're not in that room with that influencer, with the person that you're working with.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. I mean, even when you enter into a sales cycle with somebody, they've likely already made up their mind of who they want to go with. But to everybody's point here, I mean, think about, so my audience is typically selling to marketing and sellers, right? So they're obviously going to be on LinkedIn, right? That's going to be their place to live. But my procurement and sourcing folks that are going to have to be part of moving that deal through, they're likely not. So maybe an alternative to that is to make sure that I'm surrounding those conferences that those IT professionals, those IT directors might be at, those procurement professionals, with similar messaging, so that when that time comes for them to enter the deal, they also know us. So yeah, I think it's an excellent point of how are we capturing people that are not just on mediums that we know they're always on. It's where are they physically going to be. So I think leveraging the data you have with your conferences on all those key personas is really important to think about too when you're thinking about out of home.
Great examples. I love that. You guys absolutely crushed that one. Let's move to the next question. And, you know, Austin and Corinna, this is probably more for you. And then Greg, you could chime in as well. But any examples of cool out of home creatives that you can share that you've maybe been a part of or have seen or have done?
I think from like a one-to-one perspective, particularly like Austin brought up a great point about like enterprise and just how large those buying committees are. I've seen like Ogilvy, they're the big advertising company. They'll specifically go to the headquarters and have a billboard right outside their office, speaking, like using their name in the ads. So it's highly targeted, highly direct. And so I think those are really cool too. I think then too, like if you can think about pairing that with an experience, so they're maybe seeing the ad and then you're doing something else with it. I love like Nick's example where he was at the billboard, the Times Square billboard, but there was a photographer there that was going to capture that experience. So something you can do to like make that experience even more memorable. Maybe it's like, hey, it's a really hot day today. Want to learn more about cold calling? Come meet us for, a cold brew at 2 p.m. We'll be right outside your office, right? Like build the awareness and then have an experience waiting for them and connecting all those things together. That is, I can't even tell you, like, I don't even know anybody that's doing that. Like, that's just an idea of how you could marry a billboard message to an actual then experience right near them too. So I think there's just so much opportunity. Austin, I don't know if you have any cool examples.
Yeah, I love that. At one of my prior organizations, we actually did a little bit of a marrying of this. So we did a billboard ad outside of headquarters based off like, okay, we were doing enterprise, very, very large companies, Fortune 100 companies. And we were doing billboards outside of headquarters based off where their traffic is coming from, where their main people are coming in. So there's a billboard right outside the turnoff that you would come off the interstate to go to their office. And we married that with actually a gifting experience that we would send to all of our core buying committee people. And we called out the name of the company. Like we called out this company and you were right outside of it. Like, if you didn't know that the company was there, you would know now because we called you out and we said, like, we need to have a conversation. I don't remember the exact top. This was a couple of years ago, but like we married that with an experience where we sent something to everybody that we knew was influencing the buying committee as well. So we kind of tied like direct mail and this, and then we all tied like we've talked about many times during this time, we've also tied it with all the digital channels. We were doing LinkedIn, we were doing, direct mail, direct ads as well, display ads. And so we were marrying this all together, all under like the same kind of brand / color / theme / direction. And so that kind of like creates a full experience and it performed super well. We only did it on like a couple, 20, 30 handfuls of accounts, and they all, like, I would say almost 50% of them popped within the, a good time for an enterprise deal, in my opinion. So it's super successful. And it like allows you to pull things off of, other budget centers to get you more bandwidth, which I think is more important than anything right now. That's what I'm thinking. I'm sure you have some awesome examples, Greg.
Yeah, Greg, you got any good examples recently?
Oh man, I have so many thoughts on this entire topic. So what's interesting, creative is half the battle here, regardless. So anytime you're doing out of home, creative is half the battle. And I love, Corinna, like being bold with the creative is everything. Incident.io recently did a campaign with us, and move fast and break things was their tagline, and break things, part of the lettering was falling off. Like even something as simple as that wasn't necessarily calling out a specific target account, but the messaging itself was very creative and bold. And people are like, wait, is that creative not right? And that's the questions and the sort of feedback that they want in the response. We also have folks, Austin and Corinna, you both mentioned, like calling out the specific company that they're targeting, which is great. I am in San Francisco right now. I'm using an LED truck following me around to meetings and outside of specific target accounts. And the truck itself has ads that we switch in and out depending on who I'm meeting. And it's, hey, so-and-so, out of home looks really great on you, from the OneScreen team. I'm literally doing that right now. So we drink our own champagne. We've had folks that are driving LED trucks right in front of a target account and saying, hey, hello, walk downstairs, we're here. We did LED trucks for Slice, which is the pizza app, a couple of years ago, and they were looking to get more pizza restaurants signed up on the app. So we had the sales team. Their sales team was following around the truck, and they had different appointments with the local pizza shops. And they'd walk in, the truck would be behind them, similar to kind of what I'm doing now, and they'd say, hey, look outside. And they close a ton of business. This was in Portland. And, we've had also experiential, love experiential as part of this as well. Experiential, a lot of folks don't realize, is part of out of home. That is something like, let's see, Ramp did a wrapped coffee truck down in the financial district in Boston to hit all the folks that are going back and forth and commuting that are in finance, literally. You can use context, moments, and an audience to make this super impactful, coupled with the other channels. I have Sendoso, my tab opened up at all times. I love the physical. Clearly, I'm biased, but it's something I think that people are yearning for, right? People love physical, tangible. These are real life moments that people appreciate. Like, we're all buyers, right? We've all probably purchased software and other items. I think that personalization, the level of effort that goes into it to be sold to, people appreciate even more now. So I think, the real world is here to stay. And quite frankly, I think it's actually the way forward.
I love that. There's the chat is actually popping off.
Okay.
I haven't been able to keep up with it. We only have 4 minutes left. So let's answer a question, because Austin answered Mindy. Let's answer James's question, and then we'll wrap things up. And again, we'll make sure you can find everyone if you have questions after. But James said, what about using video screens in office elevators to reach ABM targets in the office building itself? I've actually never seen that or have done it personally, but it sounds awesome. Has anyone here done that or seen it?
Yes. So especially if those overlap with your target accounts, James, right? So and again, it goes back to the strategy behind this. It's audience, target accounts, and then the inventory, is essentially the sort of the third pillar. It's like, what inventory makes the most sense? If your target accounts are in buildings with these elevators and they have networks, that is absolutely a phenomenal place-based opportunity to go reach. Place-based meaning that these are screens inside. There's dwell time in an elevator, so you can tell a story. They're digital, they can show video. So love that use case. I just would obviously want to make sure that my target account, the office, is in the building in which the screens are there.
Great.
But those can be super effective.
Love that. All right. So we've got 3 minutes left. I want to ask you all the same question and see how you respond with this. But I'm gonna ask you the question, but you can only reply in one sentence. I've done this before. Sometimes Greg likes to go beyond one sentence, but if we can keep it to one sentence to make it as impactful as possible, that would be fantastic. And so the question is, and Corinna, I'll start with you first. If you had to give one piece of advice on someone that wants to use out of home for ABM in one sentence, what would you say to them?
Oh gosh, okay, that is tricky. I would say make sure you know what can be measured and how you're going to leverage the data that you're measuring later for another campaign, maybe that is a digital campaign. I think that'll help build your justification for your budget.
Love that. Austin, you're up next.
Okay. Corinna got the measurement, so I'll leave that. That was great. Everybody would do that. I will be sure to tie your out of home to an experience, because at the end of the day, we are all buyers still buying from humans, and creating experiences matters.
That's a really good one too. Big believer of that. And Greg, I will let you take us home with your sentence or multiple.
You're already planting the seed that I can't do it in one sentence. There's so many things I want to say. I actually am going to say something that might be a little bit different. Is make sure that your team, your full team, the execs, board, are all aligned on the approach and what measure of success is going to look like.
I like that. Yeah, that's a good one, actually. That buy-in of what success looks like, I feel like it's so often undervalued or underlooked by a lot of companies. So amazing.
That was one sentence.
It was one sentence. I'm actually very impressed.
Some sort of a clap, congratulatory response.
That's honestly, I thought you were going to keep going. That's why.
Thank you, Corinna. Thank you, Austin. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to Corinna, to Greg, to Austin. Really helpful stuff today. Again, if you want to find them, they're all on LinkedIn. They're all really helpful people, very, very friendly. They're not afraid. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. If you want to learn more about ABM, if you want to talk to Greg and team about out of home, Greg is, again, a very friendly person. He has incredible examples. I've known Austin and Corinna for many years as well. And again, thank you for spending 30 minutes with us. You could have spent it anywhere. You spent it with us, and we're grateful. And we'll make sure to follow up, send out the recording, and we'll catch you next month when we do this webinar again. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks all.
Yeah.